She won the match not because she played incredible, just because I made all of those mistakes from, like, if you look from the outside, kind of.
Aryna Sabalenka facing massive backlash, and the world can't stop talking about the moment that triggered it. A single dirty move, one flash of anger that stunned fans, silenced the arena, and turned a champion into the center of the biggest scandal of her career. Nobody expected Sabalenka to cross this line, but once she did, there was no going back. For most of the season, Aryna Sabalenka had been the unstoppable force of women's tennis, a storm wrapped in muscle, precision, and raw emotion. Every tournament she entered, she brought a kind of intensity that electrified crowds and intimidated opponents. She wasn't just powerful, she was volcanic. And everyone knew that when Sabalenka stepped on court, something dramatic always felt just seconds away. Her season had been a mix of brilliance and pressure. Titles, yes. Dominance, yes. But beneath that success was a rising tension even her closest supporters could feel. The interviews were shorter, the smiles were tighter, the walk to the baseline a little more rigid. Something in her was shifting, and nobody could quite explain why. The commentators said it was pressure, the weight of expectations, the grind of the calendar, the emergence of new rivals. Her coach called it focus. Her fans called it fire. But deep down, the world sensed something else. This wasn't just intensity. This was frustration, accumulating match after match, moment after moment, point after point. And eventually, pressure like that always finds a way out. The match that would change everything was supposed to be routine, a standard quarterfinal in a fictional late-season hardcourt event, a match Sabalenka was expected to win comfortably. Her opponent, a rising 20-year-old with a fearless backhand and the kind of confidence only youth could carry, was talented but inexperienced. For Sabalenka, this should have been another step toward another trophy. But from the very first point, something felt wrong. Sabalenka's timing was off. Her serve lacked rhythm. Her footwork felt heavy. And every time she missed a shot, her expression hardened, jaw tight, eyes narrowed, shoulders flaring with irritation. As the match progressed, the tension in the stadium began to grow. Sabalenka barked at herself after mistakes, shook her head violently, and took deep, sharp breaths between points. Her opponent, sensing opportunity, began swinging freely, pushing Sabalenka deeper and deeper into rallies she didn't want to fight. And then came the start of the emotional unraveling. A close line call that went against Sabalenka, a challenge she was sure would overturn it, but didn't. The crowd gasped. Sabalenka froze, staring at the replay board as her face shifted from surprise to disbelief to anger. It was just a single point, a tiny moment in a long match, but it was the spark. From that moment on, everyone watching could feel something dangerous building, a storm forming behind Sabalenka's eyes, tightening in her chest, boiling just beneath the surface. No one knew when it would erupt. They only knew it would. The second set was where everything unraveled. Sabalenka was down breakpoint, and the tension in the stadium was so thick you could hear the tiniest sound echo across the court. Her opponent tossed the ball to serve. The rally that followed felt like a rope being pulled from both ends, tight, stretched, ready to snap. Sabalenka hit a deep forehand. Her opponent countered with a down-the-line strike. Sabalenka lunged. The ball clipped the net cord. She recovered it, barely. The rally continued, grueling, punishing, until finally Sabalenka hit a short ball. Her opponent pounced, sending a clean winner past her. The stadium erupted. A break of serve. Sabalenka down again. She froze at the baseline, chest heaving, pupils wide, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. She wasn't frustrated anymore. She was furious. Then came the moment that would become the dirty move heard around the world. As her opponent walked back to the baseline, Sabalenka scooped up the ball, not gently, not accidentally, but with a deliberate, sharp flick of her wrist, and she slammed it across the court directly toward her opponent's feet. The ball didn't hit her, but it came close.
Too close. Close enough that her opponent jumped back in shock. Close enough that the chair umpire immediately leaned forward. Close enough that the entire stadium gasped in unison, a frozen wall of disbelief. Her opponent's face dropped. Not hurt, but stunned, disrespected, afraid even. Sabalenka didn't apologize. She didn't gesture that it slipped. She didn't even look sorry. She just stared, unblinking, unbothered, unrestrained, as if daring anyone to challenge her. The umpire issued a warning. Just a warning, but the crowd knew this wasn't just frustration. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment adrenaline. This was intentional, a line crossed, a move that players simply don't make. The stadium erupted into loud, rolling boos, not from a small section, not from a handful of upset fans, from everyone. Sabalenka turned her back to it all, but cameras caught it. The ball, the intent, the reaction. And within minutes, commentators were already calling it dangerous, disrespectful, and the ugliest moment of her career. And that moment, that single scorching flick of rage, was just the beginning of a storm she never expected.
By the time Sabalenka walked off court, the controversy was no longer limited to the stadium. It had already gone global. Clips of the dirty move exploded on every social platform. Slow-motion replays circulated with captions like, "Is this who she really is?" and "Suspend her immediately." Hashtags trended worldwide. Fans flooded timelines with anger and disbelief. Some of the top comments read, "She could have injured her. This is not passion. This is violence. I've defended Sabalenka for years, but this is unacceptable. This crosses every line of sportsmanship." Her opponent's reaction, a mix of shock and fear, became the biggest talking point. Analysts replayed her flinch over and over, emphasizing how close the ball had come. Headlines labeled it "the moment tennis lost its respect" and "Sabalenka's lowest point." Even players began chiming in. A few called it uncalled for. Others said, "The tour needs to take this seriously." A few hinted at past incidents, implying this wasn't the first time Sabalenka let her emotions spill beyond control. The narrative shifted rapidly. What had been an intense match only hours earlier became the center of a firestorm far bigger than anyone expected. Fans divided, but not evenly. The majority demanded punishment, a suspension even. A smaller group defended Sabalenka, saying she was misunderstood, that she plays with fire, and that the ball didn't hit anyone. But even they struggled to justify what the replay clearly showed: a ball struck with intention, frustration, and disregard. And then came the online detectives, fans who analyzed her body language, dug up old clips, stitched together montages of past outbursts to paint a picture of a player spiraling under pressure. Articles questioned her mental state. Editorials wondered if the WTA was too lenient on its most powerful star. Commentators debated whether dominance had turned into arrogance. Every hour, the backlash grew louder. Every minute, another wave of criticism. And Sabalenka? She stayed silent. Her silence didn't calm anything. It fueled the fire. But the real explosion, the part nobody saw coming, was still ahead. Because the backlash wasn't just global. It was personal.
As the hours turned into a day, the backlash began to take a more serious shape. It wasn't just fans posting reactions anymore. The tennis world's most powerful voices were stepping in. A former legend called the act the most reckless thing I've seen in a decade. A top analyst claimed Sabalenka lost the respect of her peers. A popular tennis magazine released a damning headline calling the incident Sabalenka's meltdown. And behind closed doors, the consequences multiplied. Sponsors reached out to her team, not publicly, not yet, but privately expressing concern, asking for clarification, and hinting at potential contract implications if the backlash continued. They loved her power, they loved her athleticism, but controversy? That wasn't part of the brand they sold. Tournament officials held emergency discussions. Should she be fined? Suspended? Should rules be updated? A few powerful voices argued that letting the warning stand would make the sport look weak. Even players close to Sabalenka distanced themselves. Quietly, carefully, but noticeably. What hit her hardest, though, wasn't the media. It wasn't the critics. It wasn't even the threat of punishment. It was her opponent's interview. Her opponent broke her silence in a soft, shaken voice. She didn't accuse. She didn't attack. She simply said, "I didn't expect that from her. I didn't feel safe in that moment." Those words, "I didn't feel safe," spread faster than any clip. They landed on Sabalenka like a blow to the gut. Because in that moment, this wasn't about losing control. It wasn't about being emotional. It wasn't even about tennis anymore. It became a conversation about respect, about safety, about responsibility. Sabalenka watched the interview on her phone, alone in the locker room. And for the first time since the incident, the reality of what she had done began to sink in. Her chest tightened, her jaw unclenched, her hands, usually so steady, shook slightly. But still, she said nothing. No statement, no apology. And the world noticed. But when she finally did speak, nobody expected what she would reveal. 2 days after the incident, Sabalenka released a statement. Not a short, polished PR note, not a generic apology crafted by a manager. A raw, emotional message written in her own words. She admitted she lost control. She admitted she crossed a line. She admitted that the outburst wasn't just about tennis. It was about everything she had been carrying silently for months. She revealed she had been struggling with mental exhaustion, fear of failure, overwhelming pressure, and personal issues she had tried to hide behind her competitive fire. Everything inside her had been building, tightening, twisting, until the moment she snapped. She didn't defend the action. She didn't excuse it. She owned it. But she also shared something the world didn't know. She had already contacted her opponent privately. The two had spoken. She apologized personally before saying anything publicly. Her opponent accepted the apology, but also encouraged her to seek help managing the pressure, a moment that surprised and softened fans around the world. What struck people most was not the apology itself, but the honesty. Sabalenka admitted she feared people would see her as a villain. She confessed she struggled to control her emotions. She said she felt trapped between being a fierce competitor and a human being who breaks under pressure like everyone else. The statement didn't erase the backlash, but it changed its direction. Some fans forgave her instantly, praising her vulnerability. Others said, apology or not, the behavior was unacceptable. Some debated whether athletes should be expected to remain perfect under pressure. And for the first time since the controversy began, the discussion became bigger than Sabalenka. It became about mental health, about emotional control, about the expectations placed on champions. Even her harshest critics began to shift their tone. But one question lingered. Was the apology genuine growth or carefully timed damage control? And that question would follow her into the final chapter of the story, the chapter that decides how she will be remembered. When Sabalenka finally returned to the court a week later, the atmosphere was different. Not hostile, not supportive. Something in between, a kind of cautious curiosity. Fans weren't sure what version of her they would see. Would she be calmer? Would she be angry? Would she be broken? Or would she be stronger? As she walked onto the court, she carried herself with a new stillness. No explosive warm-up swings, no barking commands at herself, no visible tension in her shoulders. Her opponent, a different one this time, approached her at the net. Sabalenka initiated the handshake before the coin toss. A small gesture, but meaningful. A quiet symbol that she was trying to reset her story. Throughout the match, she played with control. Not robotic, not restrained, but thoughtful. For the first time, it wasn't fire driving her game. It was clarity. Fans noticed. Commentators noticed. This wasn't Sabalenka 2.0. This was Sabalenka learning, adapting, evolving. Her legacy was no longer defined only by the dirty move. It was defined by how she responded to it, with responsibility, with honesty, and with a willingness to confront the parts of herself she had always kept hidden. But the question remained, Would the world forgive her completely? Forgiveness is slow. Trust is slower. Reputation is fragile. Some fans still believe she crossed an irreversible line. Others saw her humanity for the first time. And many agreed on one truth. Champions aren't defined by the trophies they lift, but by the moments they rise from their lowest points. And Sabalenka? She was rising. Whether that rise will last, whether it will transform her, whether it will change how she plays, those are questions only time will answer. Because in the end, this wasn't just a scandal. It was a mirror, a lesson, a turning point, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a new chapter in her complicated, emotional, unforgettable career. In the end, the backlash didn't break Sabalenka. It revealed her. Her flaws, her fire, her humanity, all exposed in one explosive moment that shook the tennis world. But now the question's yours. Was this incident a warning sign or the beginning of her redemption? Tell us what you think in the comments. If you want more deep dive tennis drama, rivalries, and emotional stories, make sure to subscribe. More intense stories are on the way.